Hello, I'm Antonio Mora. This is the newsandnews.com Day in Brief on Monday, March 18th at about 6:30 p.m. What the National Weather Service is calling major and historical flooding in parts of the Missouri and Mississippi River basins is stunning. 9 million people in 14 states live in areas under a flood warning, which means a flood is imminent or already occurring. At least 3 people have been killed and hundreds of thousands forced out of their homes. The Offutt Air Force Base in Nebraska, home to the U.S. Strategic Command, is engulfed by floodwaters, and operations were scaled back to include only critical personnel. The worst of the flooding for now is in Nebraska and Iowa. Some towns have been completely cut off. Authorities in the Netherlands have arrested a Turkish-born gunman who allegedly opened fire on a tram in the city of Utrecht. 3 people were killed and 5 were wounded. The head of the Dutch counterterrorism service says he cannot rule out terrorism, although he did not rule out other motives. Some reports indicate the shooting may have begun as a domestic dispute. The terror threat has been downgraded to the second highest level after the man was arrested. A gun shop in Christchurch, New Zealand, has acknowledged selling guns to the white supremacists accused of killing 50 people in shootings at 2 mosques. The shop's owner says a police-verified online mail order process was followed and that nothing extraordinary was detected about the buyer. New Zealand's Prime Minister says her cabinet has agreed to move forward with tougher gun laws. The alleged terrorist has fired his lawyer and plans to represent himself in court. Fierce clashes continue as U.S.-backed forces attempt to eradicate ISIS from the last territory the terror group holds inside Syria. The Syrian Democratic Forces claim they have now taken positions inside the ISIS enclave. At the same time, there's confusion over how many U.S. troops will remain stationed in Syria. 3 months ago, Trump declared ISIS was defeated in Syria and that the U.S. was withdrawing the 2,000-plus troops stationed there. That triggered the resignation of Defense Secretary Jim Mattis, and the administration then said, well, at least 200 peacekeepers would stay. That was later further adjusted up to about 400. Now the Wall Street Journal reports that approximately 1,000 U.S. troops will stay. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Joseph Dunford, though, denied that, stating that the U.S. is drawing down forces to a residual presence and that the 1,000 number was factually incorrect. In the aftermath of the crash of the Ethiopia Airlines 737 MAX, federal prosecutors and the Department of Transportation have reportedly launched a criminal investigation into the development process of Boeing's new jetliners. U.S. pilots were reportedly only given 56 minutes of training on an iPad about the difference between the MAX and older 737s. This comes as officials in France and Ethiopia claim the black boxes show clear similarities with the October Lions Air crash of the same type of plane. Whatever you think about National Security Advisor John Bolton, he has not succumbed to the overly optimistic view of relations with North Korea that seems to emanate from the White House and the Blue House, the South Korean president's residence. Friday, a top North Korean official threatened to restart testing of nukes and missiles, blaming the failure of the Hanoi summit on hostility from Bolton and Secretary of State Pompeo. Sunday, Bolton said North Korea wanted many billions in sanctions relief in exchange for relatively small limitations on their nuclear program. He warned that any resumption of testing by the Kim regime, quote, would not be a good idea on their part. Trump blasted Joe Biden with one of his favorite insults, calling him a low IQ individual, saying the former vice president, quote, got tongue-tied over the weekend. I did right there, too. Biden seemed to slip in a speech over the weekend, implying he was already running for president, although that might have been intentional. He is now expected to announce he's running sometime in April. One question is how he'll raise money. Senior Democrats believe he will depend more on big money donors than some of his rivals. Beto O'Rourke, though, may be proving that his enormously successful fundraising in his Senate race against Ted Cruz wasn't a fluke. His campaign reports it raised $6.1 million in the first 24 hours after it was officially launched. Beto's big bucks are more than those raised by any other candidate, exceeding Bernie Sanders by a couple $100,000. And a lot of it came from small donors. Kamala Harris raised $1.5 million in her first day after launching. The others are pulling in money much more slowly, but showing they have fundraising chops is becoming an essential part of demonstrating viability. Facebook extended last week's losses and saw its shares drop 3.3% today, its worst day of the year. The company's chief product officer left last week, and there are growing concerns that more top executives will follow him and the former head of WhatsApp out the door. The company is shifting focus toward private messaging from the open posts on its news feed. Boeing shares dropped another 1.5% after reports that the federal government is investigating the development of the 737 MAX. That capped gains in the Dow, but it was still up, and so were the other major U.S. indexes, all of them up at least 0.25%. If you happen to be one of the many older and middle-aged Americans who takes a baby aspirin every day to ward off heart attacks and strokes, you may want to stop. The American Heart Association now says that it is no longer recommended unless you are an older, high-risk patient who has cholesterol issues or trouble managing your blood sugars, as long as there is no increased risk of internal bleeding. Other recent studies have also indicated that, at best, taking the daily low-dose aspirin is a waste of money, and at worst, something that could raise your risk of internal bleeding and death. Doctors say it is much more important to optimize lifestyle habits and control blood pressure and cholesterol. You may want to watch your consumption of sweet drinks. Soda, sports drinks, and other sugary beverages increase your risk of dying from heart disease and some types of cancer. That's according to a Harvard study published in the American Heart Association's journal, Circulation. The researchers found that the more you drank sweetened beverages, the greater the risk of dying from heart disease. Artificially sweetened drinks did not have the same effect, but women who drank more than 4 diet sodas a day died at a higher rate than other groups. Switching from regular to diet seems to help mortality rates, but researchers say we should all drink water. NASA confirms a huge meteor exploded in December with 10 times the energy released by the Hiroshima atomic bomb. It was largely unnoticed because it blew up over the Bering Sea. The blast is the second largest of its kind in 30 years. Finally, I couldn't resist this story. France's Minister for European Affairs has named her cat Brexit because he's often reluctant to leave. She described him as waking her up every morning, quote, because he wants to go out, and then when I open the door, he stays put, undecided, and then glares at me when I put him out. A cat as the perfect metaphor for the UK and Brexit. We have all those stories and much more updated around the clock 7 days a week on newsandnews.com, where you'll find all you need to know in one place. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel by clicking on the right of your screen just below this video. Please follow us on Facebook at Real News and News, and follow me on Twitter at AMoraTV. I'll see you again tomorrow.